Today we're going to work with a control inside of .NET called a radio button. We're going to see how a radio button can be used very similar to how a checkbox can be used, but maybe why it's better, or in some cases why you would want to use checkboxes instead of that. We're also going to be talking about something called nested if statements. I'm creating an application called Ice Cream Shop. And to start out on this application, we are going to put on a couple checkboxes. I'm going to put 3 checkboxes on here. And I can just copy this one. A button and a label. Make all of this a little nicer to read. This will be my submit button. This label will be my output message. And then these are going to be flavors of ice cream. So the first one I'm going to make chocolate, the second vanilla, and the last one strawberry. Before I forget, I'm going to take my form load and clear out that label. There we go. Just being a little lazy. Ah, yes. I didn't name my controls. So, I'm going to go down the line and give each of these sort of their obvious names. First one is CHK chocolate. CHK is for checkbox. Vanilla. And strawberry. This one, although I set the text, I did not set the name. That's going to be LBL message. And then lastly, BTN submit. So going back into my form load, now we're good. Okay. So what we have is great if this was an ice cream store that, well, like probably any ice cream store, would let you pick multiple flavors, right? This would be 1 scoop of chocolate, 1 scoop of vanilla, 1 scoop of strawberry. However, we have such popular ice cream that we are only letting our customers do 1 scoop and 1 scoop only. So what we want to do here is we want to be able to limit their choices. And with checkboxes, you can have all of them checked. You can have 2 out of 3. You can have these 2 out of 3. You can have the first and last. There's really no limit to it. And out of the box, there's nothing that we could do to enforce one selection. Now, what we could do is on the checked changed event on here, we could fire off some code that made sure that the other 2 were not checked. So, for example, if I went into chocolate, I could say CHK vanilla got checked equals false. I could do the same thing for strawberry. I'm going to copy this because now maybe I'll do this for the other 2. I'll do it for vanilla, and as long as I'm here, I'm going to double click into there. And so for vanilla, it would be the other ones are CHK chocolate. And then for strawberry, it would be chocolate and vanilla. We could do this. So now, if I check one, it unchecks the other, but it doesn't look perfect. I think something's wrong with my code here. Strawberry, I'm unchecking. Vanilla, it should be working. So who knows what's going on. I think what's happening is that it's firing when I uncheck it as well. So when it gets unchecked, it kind of does some extra weird stuff. But that's okay. Either way, with a little more work, we could get it to work perfect, or we could use something right out of the box. Because what we want to do then is on our submit button, we want to check to see which one would check, and we'd have to check all three anyway. So if instead of using checkboxes, we're going to use something called a radio button. And that is in our common controls. And we go alphabetical, R, and here's a radio button. Now you see it looks an awful lot like checkbox. I'm going to make 3 of these. 1, 2, 3, and I'll get the styling kind of in line with what I already have. Change my font size to 14. Okay, and then update the text property. That works just like the checkbox would. So here we go, chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. Now, naming convention for this, instead of CHK, because it's not a checkbox, is RB. RB for radio button. So I do RB chocolate, RB vanilla, and surprise RB strawberry. Well, let's see what we have now. So hitting start. Now we notice we didn't write any code behind this here. Let's start it. And with these, that's still acting kind of goofy. But now, over here, if I pick chocolate, instead of the checkbox action, I get a little circle that's filled in. If I pick the other one, it will automatically unselect this one and pick this one instead. Same with here and here. We would say that these radio buttons are in a group. And so any radio buttons that you drag on your phone like this, out of all of them, only one can be selected at any time. Which is great because it gives us a way of limiting user input to only one particular choice. Now, with the checkboxes, because checkboxes can each be independent, aside from our code that we wrote, but they can each be independently selected, you have to check each individual one. But with radio buttons, you kind of have the concept that only one can be picked. So we would say that if chocolate is picked, we know that the other two are not. So if I had an if statement, I would say if chocolate dot checked equals true, then that's our choice and we're good to go. We know what was picked. If I pick vanilla, I'm going to do the same test. I'm going to say if chocolate checked equals true, which it isn't, then I come down, I know that's not picked, so only then do I test vanilla, and that's with an else if, which we know how to do. So radio buttons are really kind of paired right together with using else if statements. So let's see what that would look like. So on my button submit here, let's do our pseudocode. I don't like using that slash in my comment. Let's try that. And then output to user. Well, what will we have for a variable here? We could do booleans, one for each, but that probably might be a little overkill. What we're going to track is actually going to be the message that's output to the users. That, in fact, is going to be our only variable that we're working with here. So my variable will be string str message. Now in this case, the user input is going to be the radio button, which is also, like I said, tied pretty close to the if statement itself. So in this case, these two steps are going to be the same thing. And so this is what it will look like. The first thing we're going to check is if the chocolate was picked. So we say RB chocolate dot checked just like checkbox, equals true. Now, I have it spelled out like this because I think it reads easier, but this would also be correct. And this is probably a better practice because remember what we're really doing is saying if true. But this is also acceptable. Remember, you're going to write code for yourself first. You want to make sure that you can read your own code and that you know what is going on with your own code. If you don't understand this, how are you going to finish the rest of your program? So do whichever way works better for you. I'm going to stick with this for right now. Okay? If this was picked, we say str message equals 1 scoop of chocolate. That's our order. Now, if this was not checked, we know that it can only be either vanilla or strawberry after that point. So now, after that, we say else if rb vanilla.checked equals true. And we're doing an else if because if chocolate was picked, there's no way that vanilla and strawberry could be picked too because we have this inside of a radio button, right? So if chocolate was picked, because of the way this radio button works, there's no way that vanilla and strawberry is picked, and so we're not even going to check on those. Alright, str message equals 1 scoop of vanilla. And then lastly, we could do else and just leave it like that because, let me run this again quick. If chocolate checked as false, vanilla checked as false, then strawberry must be true because there are only 3 on here. So we would say str message equals 1 scoop of strawberry. Okay, we have our logic in place, so now we can take our message and display it on our label for output. Alright, let's run it. Chocolate, submit, 1 scoop of chocolate, excellent. Submit, 1 scoop of vanilla, pick this, 1 scoop of strawberry. Now I'm going to run this again because remember I said this else should take care of everything. But what if they don't pick and I hit submit? It still picks strawberry. So it's possible, although you can't unselect these from a user perspective, it's possible that the user wouldn't pick anything at all to begin with. So it would probably be better if we did else if rb strawberry.checked equals true. And then what we should have here instead for our else is something like this. Please select an ice cream flavor. And that's really making sure that we have all the possibilities covered here. So hitting start again, and now there we go, we're good. So for this application, these are really, I would say, much better. Now, I don't want to destroy the whole application if some of you want to take a look and see what this looked like. So I'm going to take these 3 right here, all 3 checkboxes, and I'm going to set the visible property to false. And then I'm just going to kind of sneak them off over to the side here. And that way, if some of you want to actually see the difference between how they behave, you can just go in and set the visible back to true. Although you can see them on the form, now you can see that they are gone. So this is great, but I think it's a little redundant to have to keep clicking our submit button. And so, kind of like how we had done for checkboxes in prior applications, we can have code fire off when this has been changed. So double clicking on this radio button will create a RB chocolate, right? Radio button name checked change. So it's in fact, it works just like the check changed event does on a checkbox. And so let's do 3 of these. Let's do vanilla, and then for strawberry. Now I don't want to take that code we wrote and write it 3 times. So what we should do is take all of our code out of button submit click. I'm going to Control C to copy, or you can just do Control X for cut. And I'm going to write a function for this. So I'm going to call it private void, and then we will say, let's say update flavor. Okay. Parentheses are mandatory at the end because it is a function. It is something that actually does work for us. So we have to have that on there so when we use it, compiler knows that it's a function. So pasting that all in between the start and finish brackets right here. And now I should be able to copy this, doing another Control C, Control C, and then just click in between, and I can paste a semicolon at the end. So now every time I check or uncheck, or it picks it and then this one unselects one of them, that function will fire. So now we are looking good, and I can probably hide my submit button. Again, I'm going to leave that in there for those of you that wanted to play around with that old code. Just going to hit this to visible is false. And now we kind of have our application back. It's not pretty, but it does the job. Okay, so the else if isn't really new, but the radio button is, because it does a lot of that work. We saw it would have been a little extra work to make our checkboxes behave the same, and we also have to take into account that users, for the most part, understand when they see a radio button that that's how it works. So we are able to take advantage of their shared experience with this. Whereas a checkbox, they see, okay, I check it, I uncheck it, that's how that works. This, most users know, is a limiting choice. Okay, let's add another flavor into the mix. I'm going to copy one of these since I already have the font set up. And now I'm going to call it other. I'm going to line these up too. So I'm going to pick the first one, and oops, I'm going to pick the first one, hold my shift key down, pick the other, go up to my layout bar, and I'm going to align the lefts, and then I'm going to say make vertical spacing equal. There we go. That's looking a little better. Okay, this is what I want to happen here. First, we should probably give it a name. RB other. Whoa. Caps lock. RB other. Okay, this is what I want. When this one gets picked, it's going to open up a whole new set of options, maybe some crazy flavors that aren't really your standard. So we actually, I'm going to copy this again. We're going to do Control C, or if you'd like, right click copy, right click paste, and I'm going to do 3 of these. Let's make it some weird ones, right? So like, we got pistachio. Maybe there's a bacon one. It's out there. It's a real thing. And coffee. Okay. Just like before, RB pistachio. Gonna do my naming convention. And RB coffee. Okay, let's run it. So when this one is selected, these are going to be available as an other choice. And then if they don't want to do this, then clicking one of these is going to bring this back, and all of these will be unselected. So here we go. Alright, so far so good, but what I really like to do is hide these. And then when it does other, it's going to show these up, and then, oh, okay. Well, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. So the first thing we want to do is we want to hide these. We don't want to see these by default. And because we want to hide them all as a group, we're going to use something that's called a container control. And in fact, if you scroll down in your toolbox, there is a little collapsed section called a container. And what we want is something called a group box. And what a group box is, it kind of looks like a little panel. You'll see that just dragging on it isn't enough. You gotta look for this little crosshairs up in the upper left hand corner. It's going to disappear unless you actually have it selected. And that one you can drag around. That's one of the handles. Okay? So this is like a little panel on here. And what we want to do is I'm going to grab this handle and resize it. And now I'm going to grab all three of these. I'm holding my shift key down, selecting them. And then I'm going to move them in. And once you get that mouse cursor into the group box, they become part of the group box. And now, if I move this around, they all move together, which is great. But what's even better is now I can hide or show this whole thing. So with my group box selected, if I went in and I hit false, and I did start, the whole thing is gone. Going back, if I set visible to true, oops, pick the group box, visible, true, we can see it again. So this operates as a whole. These controls still exist independently, but now they're kind of in this container, which lets us work with the whole thing. And it's kind of nice to be able to move them all around at once without having to do the whole drag over thing too. Now, this is a control, so it has a naming convention too. And we're going to call this GB other. And if you look, it's got a title on there too. That's its text property. And so we're going to call that, let's just say other flavors. Oops, I did not change that. Other flavors. There we go. Looks like I changed, oops, I accidentally changed the form. You change that back. The form title, the form text is ice cream shop. There we go. Alright, initially, I set this to false. Actually, no, I need to show you something first. You hit start. Watch what happens now. Okay? These are picked, great. And now, these operate independently. So once we put our radio buttons inside of a group box, they're no longer part of this set, this group here. You notice this does not, clicking bacon, does not unselect anything over here. Watch what happens if I take these controls and I drag them back out onto the form. Okay, watch. Vanilla, strawberry, other, pistachio, boom, unselects it. Bacon, here. Now I'll pick chocolate. It's not going to work, right? Because we want to have other selected, and then it's going to pick that over. So we want these to be independent from the other ones. So let's move this back right here, and let's actually make this happen. Let's make this show and hide. So my group box, going to set that visible to false. And now what we want is that when this other is selected, this whole thing, this whole group box is going to be shown. Now we don't have an other in there, so we're going to say inside of our function, inside of our update flavor function, we're going to say else if rb other dot checked equals true, and we're going to say gb other dot visible equals false. So what we're doing is we're actually, no, that's not true. We want to do visible is true. So let's try it. Here we go. Vanilla, great. Strawberry, great. Other. Alright. So now, when someone picks one of these, we want that to be shown. So let's do that. And so what should we do? Well, we could add that to our if statement. right? So we could do this. We could say, after our other, we could say else if RB pistachio got checked equals true, string message equals 1 scoop of pistachio. So other, and there we go. But something's not working right. So let's take a look at our code. It all looks to be in order, right? We're checking chocolate, checking vanilla, strawberry, other, and that's checked. Shows the other group box. And then if none of these are checked, then it checks for our pistachio. So let's run it again. Vanilla, strawberry, great, other, okay. And now pistachio. And let's look at this. Let's see. Okay, this is selected, and now this is selected also. Let's work this through our if statement flow and find out what's going on. So, is chocolate checked? No. Then check if vanilla is checked. False. Strawberry checked. False. Other checked. True. So it gets to this block and it stops, right? Because this is true. Other was checked. And so then it goes down here and it moves on. It doesn't execute these two. But we want it to execute this. We want it to check to see if pistachio is checked. So what's going on here is we want this to happen, but we also want this to happen. And so what we need is actually to do this test. We need to ask this question inside this other code block. And so I'm going to take this whole block here, I'm going to cut it out, and I'm going to paste it in here. Because remember, anything between these brackets is going to execute only if this is true. And if you think about it, in our application, we only want these flavors to be checked if other has been checked. So all I got to do is, whereas this was an else if before, I'm going to get rid of my else, and I'm going to fix up some of my indentations here. Hit the tab key. Sometimes you got to clean that stuff up when you do a copy and paste. Visual Studio doesn't always fix it for you. Or you can do this. You can delete the last brace, and then you can like trick it to do it again. And sometimes that'll fix it. So let's see what's going on here. Well, because we only want this code to execute when other is checked, that's exactly what's happening. It sets the group box visible to true, and then it asks another question. We would say that this is a nested if, right? So if you think of this, this is the bird's nest right here. This is mama bird right here, and she has got this whole if statement inside. Okay, this is inside the nest. We would say it's a nested statement because it's inside another if statement. It's only going to execute if this statement is true. So now we have a nested if, and we don't have to ask unnecessary questions because, for example, if chocolate is checked right here, we pick chocolate, we don't care about these. We only care about them if other has been selected. So let's take a look here. Vanilla, strawberry, great, other, alright, and okay, that's not working, but we're on the right track. And so we got this is checked equals true, and then string message 1 scoop of pistachio. So it actually should be working. But our problem is, what we're expecting to happen is when we click on these, it causes that function to fire. But with these are still just kind of dumb radio buttons. They don't know how to do anything. We have to call the same function when these are clicked now, just like we did for these. We have to call check change. So going into our form, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. And even though that they're inside that group box, we can still call this right here. I'm just going to call the same function inside each of them. And so now, when I pick other, and now I pick pistachio, it works as expected. And we have to do our code for these now too. So, where does that leave us? Now we got our if statement, we got our nested one. Well, just because this is nested doesn't make it any different than any other if statement. In fact, we could put another if statement inside of here, and we could put another if statement inside of that one. There's really no limit to how many if statements you can nest, other than, well, how confusing does it get the more you nest in there. But because it's an if statement, we can do else, and we can do else if. So now, because we're in other, I can check and see is rbBacon.checked. And I can check and see if rbCoffee is checked. And lastly, if they picked other, but maybe they didn't pick a flavor yet, let's take care of that too and just say, okay, anything else happens, string message equals, please select a flavor from the list of other flavors. And we'll do the other ones here too. str message equals 1 scoop of coffee, and str message equals 1 scoop of bacon. Scoop of bacon. Okay, hit start. Vanilla, strawberry, other. Please select a list of them. That's good. That's helpful. Gives them some instructions when they click. Pistachio, great. Bacon, coffee, also great. And then these go back when one of the other ones has been picked. Okay? Now, I think it's a pretty great application. I think really the only thing that could be missing is maybe when one of these other ones are picked, this whole box goes away. So I can do one of these. In fact, I'm just going to copy this line, GB other, group box other, and then in chocolate, I'll set visible equals false, and I'll copy that line into vanilla and strawberry. Okay? So, vanilla, strawberry, other, awesome, pick that stuff, pick one of the other ones, and it goes back away. I think one more thing we could do to improve this is that if they pick off of this, and this is purely a design choice, there's really no hard rule for it, but if I pick strawberry, it closes that up, and then I go back into other, it retains that choice, right? So if I pick bacon and go into chocolate, and then I go back into other again, it stays there. And maybe we want that to be sort of a fresh choice every single time. And so what we can do is that we can actually unselect or uncheck all of these here when someone clicks off of it. And so where we're doing GB other, this is in our update flavor function, we would say rbPistachio.checked false, rb, what was the second one, bacon dot checked equals false, rb coffee dot checked equals false. And so let's run this, and it's only going to work for chocolate because we didn't do it for the other ones. So let's run it, and let's say vanilla, strawberry, other, coffee, pick chocolate, and then go back to other, and it did clear it out. So we could copy and paste this into all of them, or because we're facing the possibility of replicated code, of duplicate code, we should create another function, and I'm going to call this clear other. And so every time we want to clear out that other, we're going to hide it, and we're going to clear out all of those radio buttons. So this is sort of a utility function. This is a perfect use of it. 4 lines of code, nice and simple, all does the same thing. And now I can call clear other instead of this, get my semicolon at the end, and then now where I was hiding it, all these other situations for vanilla and strawberry, I'm just going to call that function. So we can in fact call one function that we wrote inside of another function. There's no limit. You could say that we're nesting our function calls too. So we've got nested ifs and we've got nested function calls now as well. Let's see what happens. Let's start vanilla, strawberry, other, coffee, strawberry, other, cleared out, bacon, vanilla, other, cleared out, pistachio, chocolate, other, and there we go. And if we want to decide how this gets changed in the future, maybe we don't want to clear it out, maybe we want to set the first one, we just change it in one place. So we got some great stuff here. We got checkboxes that we don't want anymore. We have on check change radio buttons doing some setting the labels here. We have other that's hiding and showing a group box. We're doing that all with functions, and then when it gets selected off, we're clearing this out and we're hiding that with another function. Inside the code itself, else ifs for determining which radio buttons were selected, and really our new thing is having an if statement inside of another if statement's code block, and we'd say that this if statement is nested inside of this one.